What's going on, hockey fans, and welcome in to your crash course in all things junior hockey, college hockey, and the world we now live in since the news that came down just weeks ago. We start with a drip. No, it's not my water heater in the background as it cools off down here in Florida. It's the drip of players making their way to the CHL, and that drip continues. We look at the world of junior hockey right now, and we see a nonstop flow of players from the USHL looking to make their way to the CHL with reported protectionism and transfer fees between $50,000 to $100,000 trying to hold the wall. It's like Hodor right now for those of you Game of Thrones fans. Hold the door. Hold the door. BCHL, we look at them. Are they losing anyone? Yes, they are losing players in droves right now to the CHL. We looked at that last week. We talked about it. We went through it. We continue with their feet. The USHL players are trying to tell you that right now the CHL is the better product and the USHL is not the fourth major junior hockey league. Again, we talked about those protectionism fees, those $50,000 to $100,000 reports, keeping players in the USHL from moving to the CHL product. CHL expansion. With rumors of USHL teams joining in, will the CHL become even bigger and stronger as the weeks go on here into the months and into the coming season next year? We talked a little bit about D1 hockey, and that D1 is signing nothing but non-NHL CHL age-outs that were headed for U Sport anyway, and helping the CHL divest and eliminate themselves of scholarship liabilities. What was that all about? We talked about a world where the CHL in the past has had a scholarship set up for players who went to U Sport. Now will that be given off to the NCAA Division I schools that are taking these talented players in as they continue to go older with their rosters, trying to win now and win forever? The CHL messaging, as Lucas pops this up on the board, a recent statement from WHL Commissioner Dan Neer, his statement on NCAA men's hockey eligibility changes. Today's announcement that CHL players will now be eligible to compete in NCAA Division I hockey beginning in the 25-26 season represents a historic and consequential outcome that will be celebrated by all of those invested in the on and off ice development of young players. The decision creates opportunity for the brightest elite hockey players in Western Canada and the Western US to now choose the WHL as the preferred destination for their development from the age of 16 to 20 without fear of compromising their NCAA eligibility. Strong words, a strong statement. We talked about the word battle. We talked about the word war. And we've seen comments in the YouTube sections and on social media about those terms. Folks agreeing with us. Folks saying that's exactly what this is right now. It is a battle. One side with generals like Commissioner Dan Neer, the other side looking for their leadership as they go through. We talked about USNTDP as we talked last week. The games were going on since then. Slaughtered is a word we've seen. Beaten is a word we've seen. It was a rout in favor of the CHL, not helping the cause of USA hockey and everything in between as this continues. Lucas Jones, as we get into this, Dan K here on your call, before we bring the professor in, talk a little bit about what we have coming up next.
Yeah, it feels very much like we're the TAs here, just kind of prepping the room before the professor gets into town. And I think one of the things that you look at when you look at the situation is that it is a war, it is a battle, and in any war, you have to control the flow of information. You have to control the narrative. And this is something that anybody who's ever worked in public relations or any kind of PR field, they know, right? If you're not telling the story, someone else is. And right now, there's just no response from the D1 leadership, which is allowing the CHL to absolutely flood the zone with information, but also twist the information that's out there. It is the CHL's narrative alone that is filling the space right now, and they are controlling the news cycle. 4 more months of this beatdown, it's not going to be good unless D1 kind of devises a message and a plan. And most importantly, they need a strong and effective, some would even say singular way to communicate that plan. Because if you have too many voices that are communicating, even a small discrepancy can make those voices sound like chaos. And one man who doesn't do chaos, a man who is so incredibly organized that he has 5 versions of every agenda that reach their way into our inbox. It's the professor. It's Bob Turow. Bob, take it away.
You guys, this professor stuff, I'll tell you. Guys, I want to start off with a statement from the Ontario Hockey League commissioner, and I'm going to read it, and then we're going to break it down and dissect it, okay? And just the way it reads is, through this transition, the Ontario Hockey League will continue to honor its commitments through the OHL Scholarship and Development Program to players as they play out their years of eligibility, setting 20 and 21-year-old graduates up for success as they embark on the new challenges both on the ice and in the classroom through both the NCAA and U Sport. That's the statement. Let's break it down. Through this transition, the league will continue to honor its commitments through the OHL Scholarship and Development Program. I had a hard time not laughing on that one. They're looking to pass $10 to $15 million in liability off to Division One. I mean, I talked to an OHL executive and an agent this week that said the current packages are going to be grandfathered in, but the future ones are going to be 1 year played, 1 year you get, and to collect that, you have to play until you're aged out in the CHL, in this case, the OHL. So don't stay, don't collect. The second part I want to break down. As players play out their years of eligibility, setting 20 and 21-year-old graduates up for success, what the CHL is saying is we're keeping all the players until they're 20 and 21.
Yeah.
CHL age outs, the numbers speak to it. If you go back to pod number 1, they're not National Hockey League players. And yes, there might be one generational player that is, or a player from U Sport that comes up and they play in the NHL. But when we stopped and looked at the rosters on November the 11th, there were 0 U Sport players playing in the National Hockey League. Then finally, up for success as the players embark on new challenges both on the ice and in the classroom through both the NCAA and U Sports. This, you talk about messaging, Lucas, this is a message. Because what the CHL has done here is they have lumped in NCAA Division I hockey with U Sport, who has no players in the National Hockey League. They have literally marginalized or are trying to marginalize Division I hockey. And the response from Division I hockey? Crickets. The CHL narrative is the only narrative right now. Now listen, we all knew this was coming. All the coaches knew this was coming. There was litigation that had to be avoided. What D1 leadership, whoever that leadership is before that decision came down, they should have said, give us a 2-week buffer. Give us a delay so we can get all the coaches, all the commissioners together and form a strategy, whether it be for recruiting, for College Hockey Inc., for media strategy, Lucas, as you were talking about earlier. We need a coordinated plan. And the NCAA just dumped it on them, or the leadership in Division I hockey didn't ask for that delay. And now players, parents, and agents, they're getting one side of the story, and that's it. Now, there is a little bit of bright news on the future. A couple of Division I coaches told me this week that in the spring, the NCAA, and I want to make this clear, I'm talking NCAA in Indianapolis, not the Division I coaches, that there is a vote coming up. It's certainly on the agenda. One coach told me it was on the agenda. Another coach said there was going to be a vote to only allow in hockey either freshmen or true freshmen plus a year. And that would reflect what other sports, I think the only other sport that doesn't have that is skiing. But that would if that vote were to take place, it would force Division I teams to go after the kids that we're telling them to go after, which are the 17 and 18-year-olds. My advice is to the D1 leadership and the coaches, you can't wait for that. You can't wait for spring. Lucas, you called it. You're going to take a beating for 4 months? I mean, that's unacceptable. There needs to be a meeting right away to form what the message is. And the message needs to be the CHL is taking all the 16-year-olds. And by the way, those players are coming right now in droves. And the message is the CHL is keeping those players until they're 20 or 21 years old. Emergency meeting, you say? College hockey? Come on. We're going to get together at the coaches' convention and we're going to talk about things. Right. Let me tell you about an emergency meeting. When I was running USHL Central Scouting and I was running prospects and we talked about all the players that were there and I was dealing with all the agents, I got a call from Jeff Jackson, the head coach at Notre Dame University. This was in 2008. And it was like December the 1st. And he said, we're getting killed. This new Canadian development model that the Hockey Canada put in place at the behest of the CHL so that it would make it tougher for Canadian players to get to college hockey. We can't get those players. And by the way, there's more American players going up to the CHL.
Yeah.
We're getting slaughtered right now, and we need to do something about it. I go, what are you talking about? An emergency meeting? It's December the 1st. You guys are playing hockey games. He says, I'm getting some people together. I want you to meet us in Ann Arbor. Okay, I'll be in Ann Arbor. And sure enough, the people that were in Ann Arbor were Jeff, Jackie Parker from Boston University, Red Berenson from the University of Michigan, Seth Appert, the head coach at RPI, and he was the head of the Coaches Association at the time. And I was told Dave Hackstall was supposed to be there, but he got snowed in. True blue bloods.
Yeah.
And the goal of the meeting really was, Jeff said, I want you to come with a plan on how we're going to be able to reverse this and start getting all these players and having them come to Division I rather than go to the CHL. And I came with a plan. And I'm not going to get into the total plan here. Maybe that'll be fodder for another pod because it's a fun little story. But the only thing after meeting with the coaches and then meeting with the commissioner of the USHL and one of their owners, and then meeting with USA Hockey and the development team staff, the only thing to come out of it was College Hockey Inc., which isn't a bad thing, but it's light years from what I was proposing to them. Now, the ironic part about what I was proposing to them today wouldn't mean a hill of beans because the apple cart, remember the 52 cards, Dan? We thrown 51 of them out. I mean, it doesn't matter anymore. So what I'm saying to Division I hockey, you need a meeting. I don't know if it's a Zoom meeting. I don't know if it's conference meetings and then you send a representative somewhere, but you need a meeting because you're getting beaten over the head right now by the narrative that the CHL is spinning. Make sense?
Yeah, it makes 100% sense.
Guys, this beating can't continue. The narrative is not good for college hockey. And you're going to hear me use the word united. You guys use it too. Because one thing the CHL is they're united.
Yeah.
And college hockey needs to all get on the same page and with the same message. So let's skip through here a little bit here. And let's ask ourselves, what's the goal of Division I hockey? I think Division I needs to figure that out. Will they remain old and turn into U Sport as I suggest? I mean, listen, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they won't be U Sport. But I can tell you, if CHL is going to keep all the players until they're 20, There's already a model for that, and it's U Sport, and there's no U Sport players in the National Hockey League.
Yep.
The result of that, if they do that, you're going to see more AICs out there. There's going to be contraction in college hockey when there should be an expansion. You're going to have teams, because it's getting expensive to run these programs, that are just not going to be able to justify the expense, whether it be just of keeping their program growing right now or building a new arena, if it's just new U Sport. Or Division I hockey can decide to fight for the best 17 and 18-year-olds who are true freshmen or true freshmen plus a year, where all the players are still hungry and still have the dream of making it into the National Hockey League. They have to make that decision soon, because of the 1,462 players that are rostered in the CHL right now, there's 175 of them that are on NHL protected lists, and 69 have already signed entry-level contracts and are not NCAA eligible anymore. As these days go on, more of those contracts get signed. If they wait, and they don't have this emergency meeting, how many more will be signed and will be ineligible?
Yeah.
So the good news is, guys, there is still time if Division I wants to be NHL relevant, but they need to act quick. And once they meet and talk and decide, they need to be united. And in my opinion, in the plan that we're going to present here, they need to be united, going after all of the best players who, for the most part, are going to be housed in the CHL. And those are the 17 and 18-year-olds. So the following about what we're going to talk about tonight, after they have a meeting, that's the first suggestion, is a united plan moving forward. So, true freshman plus a year. Leadership needs to find out if this is going to happen from the NCAA. They don't even need to do that. They need to make a decision themselves. Don't wait for that. Springtime, as we said, is too late. Act now. Make the internal ruling. They can do that to go after these kids. And why must they act together? Because if they don't, there will be a further widening of rich and poor in Division I hockey, because the blue bloods, if everybody stays old, that's not a blue blood. And the blue bloods still have the younger players. The blue bloods have all the money to buy all the young players. And young and skilled. Listen, just to take a look at the NCAA Division I hockey rankings right now. It's littered with blue bloods. That's just going to expand. The non-blue bloods will be getting CHL age-outs, and they think that those players are going to be better than the players that they're getting right now. Be careful. A lot of those players who are going to U Sport, the dream is over. And will those players come to your program, like two Division I coaches said to me this week, and really not have that hunger because the dream is still in front of them? We'll see. So D1, in conclusion, must take the fight to the CHL for the best 17 and 18-year-olds. And the plan that we're going to go over is a plan on how they can do that. I just want to give you one example, guys, of why I think they should all go after the 17 and 18-year-olds. My first year in the USHL as the head of central scouting and running what they now call the combines, there was a decision to be made to whether to bring the national team into the USHL with a special schedule that they still have to this day. And as the newbie, I didn't really want to say anything, but I just listened, basically. And half the league didn't want to do it, and half the league wanted to do it. And so they came around to me, and they said, "What do you think, Bob?" And I said, "You'd be crazy not to have the development team in your league, because they're going to have supposedly the best 23-year-olds at 17 and 16 that are going to be playing in your league. And for all the kids that don't make those teams, they're going to want to come to your league because it wasn't a given at that point in time, like it is right now, far from it. They're going to want to come to your league. And what's going to happen is you're going to find out that the development team on the last 10 picks that they make in any one year is going to make a mistake.
Yeah.
And those players are going to start showing up in various arenas around the USHL, which means more of them get NHL draft picks. And that's exactly what's happened with the USHL since that decision was made. I know there's a lot of non-blue bloods out there in Division I hockey right now that are saying, I cannot compete with the blue bloods. Can I throw a couple blue blood names out there, guys? Is that okay with you?
Hey, fire away. Let's hear them.
How am I going to compete with Michigan or Michigan State or Wisconsin or BU or BC or Dakota or Denver?
Yep.
Same reason applies from what happened in the USHL. The player pool just expanded by 1,500 players. Yep. There's going to be mistakes that are made recruiting young players who don't turn out, and you're going to be able to get those young players who are more talented than the 21-year-olds that you're going to be bringing into your program with a hungrier attitude, coming into your program. Are you going to make mistakes? Sure, you're going to make mistakes. We all make mistakes, as far as drafting players, selecting players, committing to players. But we have to think differently now because the entire player pool is wide open. They need to be going after true freshmen. Can I keep rolling here, guys? Because I'm on fire.
Yeah, keep battling, baby. Let's go.
We talked about College Hockey Inc. So when College Hockey Inc. came out of that meeting that we had in Ann Arbor with those 4 NCAA Division I coaches, its purpose was very simple. Educate and inform young players so they don't bust their college eligibility. They find a league like the USHL or the North American League or the BC League or the AJ or whatever it was, and then make their way to college hockey. News alert for everybody. That purpose is gone. Nobody has to stay eligible anymore. So what's the purpose of College Hockey Inc.? If it's going to continue just doing what it is, I don't know what their budget is, but you can pocket that money. It's useless. What I'm suggesting is they need to form a central scouting for college hockey. I'll explain it a little bit in a second, but I want to talk about some foundational stuff. College hockey, in this pursuit of all the North American leagues, right up to the National Hockey League, is the only league that does not share information. National Hockey League, central scouting. OHL, central scouting. Western Hockey League, central scouting. Quebec Major Junior League, central scouting. Division I hockey needs a central scouting. And it's way more than a central scouting. And this is a fundamental change for college hockey, because I've had college hockey coaches say to me, well, I go out there and I do all the work. Why should somebody else get the benefit if they're not working? Yep. And the whole idea, guys, is identify players, rate players, get contact information for players, and hammer them with messaging as to why Division I hockey is where you want to be. That is exactly what CHI, College Hockey Inc., needs to do. And there needs to be no favoritism. You take a look at the National Hockey League, those central scouts are generic. They don't favor the Ottawa Senators over the Montreal Canadiens. They're generic. And some of those NHL teams, they will call the central scouts and treat them like they're one of their own scouts. Tell me what you saw the other night. Other teams, they won't call at all. It's just a resource to provide scouting reports on identified players who could potentially play Division I hockey, rate those players, get the contact information, and get information to those players. Then, B, you need a smaller group of College Hockey Inc. scouts. They're going to focus on the 16 and 17-year-olds to help the Division I people who are now going to be watching those players. The Division I people aren't going to be watching the 14 and 15-year-olds. They're grade 9 and 10 students. They're freshmen and sophomores. Maybe a couple blue bloods may be watching them, but not many more. Okay, they just don't have the staffing to do it. So again, it's support for all the teams on scouting reports, ratings, contact information, and then hype, front of mind all the time on all these players. C, every agent tells me that Division I hockey has a massive advantages over the CHL when it comes to medical care, injury recovery, nutrition, hockey facilities, workout facilities off ice, dormitories, not billets. Can I throw in nil there? How about Alston money? This all needs to be messaged to both the player, the parent, the agent, the coaches that are coaching these players right now. All of it. And schools, D, must supply information to College Hockey Inc., preferably showing all of these advantages. Wouldn't a nice video go a long way on the CHI website as far as what every school has to offer? And you have now these players in the CHL taking a look at what they're getting in the CHL compared to what they're going to be getting in Division I hockey. Are you kidding me? There is no comparison. E, brand. When I came into the USHL, Gino Gasparini and Josh Mervis, they had an idea. They wanted to get younger. The league had just made more financial commitments, and they wanted more NHL players. They were bringing in the development team. They wanted the next group of players to come in to follow them. What did we do? We formed the USHL showcases, now called the Combines, for 14 and 15-year-olds. College Hockey Inc., in its transformation, should copy what the CHL and the USHL does right now. They need to create in-season tournaments. They need to create spring events where that message that D1 hockey wants to get out to them can be drilled into everybody's head. I know we're going to hear from some non-blue bloods, oh, you're going to have these events at Big School A and Big School B and Big School C. No. I told you, College Hockey Inc., just like a central scouting agency, is going to be a generic, non-favoring group. You're going to switch these events from around the country, from team to team, arena to arena. Everybody's going to be treated fairly. At 16 and 17, this is F now. When those kids are in the CHL, and they're going to be in the CHL, anybody in any league that wants to tell me they're not going to the CHL, you're dreaming. Now you got to help the schools who are jumping in and now on those players in the CHL, probably through their agents, maybe directly through their parents, okay? But you need to have information continually while they're in the CHL being sent to those players generically on why they want to play college hockey. And oh, yes, you can pick where you want to play college hockey. And let's go to our website, because I don't want to go to one of the blue bloods. I want to go to somebody else that's closer to home, or I want to go to somebody else that I might be able to be a second liner right away rather than wait my turn. G, all of this will control the narrative that we talked about early in this broadcast, guys, from grade 9 freshmen to grade 12 seniors. One last point, and I touched on it just a little bit. A huge advantage that college hockey has over the CHL, you can go to whatever school you want. You pick your destination. You're not drafted and have to go somewhere where you don't want to go. Just another point, and we can go down this long line of points of advantages that Division I hockey has. They just need a platform to get it out there. Make sense?
Makes sense. And Bob, I think one other thing that you miss in the pitch that College Hockey Inc. has is the education part of this, right? And I understand for those players out there, not everyone's the 4.0 GPA student trying to get an Ivy League degree. But even without the qualifications, if you're good enough, schools can work with you. You can get a pathway to get yourself academically eligible, to get yourself onto a campus. Hockey is a contact sport. How many times is the game taken away from us, even when we are at our best, even when we are an incredible player? I worked with a guy, one of my favorite people I've ever worked with. Sorry, Lucas. Sorry, Bob. But Brett Brunato. He played for Coach Hackstall up there at UND. He played at Vermont. All right. And this was a young man who got 2 advanced degrees while playing college hockey. He then was drafted by the Capitals the same year that Backstrom was drafted, was in camp, was playing, gets out in the ice and takes a cheap shot, takes a really serious injury to the upper body and ends his career. And what is he able to do? He's able to take that injury, turn it into a job because he was academically advanced and able to work with the GM of the team at the time to get himself a job. And now he's worked on more advanced degrees through the colleges that he went to and is a lawyer, an extremely successful lawyer with a lot more money than he was making as a hockey player. So it's the idea of we sometimes lose sight in this battle of the academics because they're not always fun for everybody. Everyone doesn't love going to class, right? We don't love sitting down listening to Professor Turow tell us what we need to know, what we need to learn, okay? But there is such an advantage in life to getting that education, to getting in the classroom, and more importantly, to doing it when everyone else is doing it and not doing it when you're 25 and done playing hockey. It's important, Bob, and I think it just adds to what you're selling.
I made Lucas Jones a promise. You brought up the word leadership, Lucas. Here we go. Point number 5. D1 hockey needs to be run like a business with a CEO and a staff. Mike Krzyzewski, the head coach at Duke University basketball, has been screaming forever for NCAA basketball to have a commissioner or a president. I have this in capital letters here. It's a business. And with nil money, it's really a business. D1's competition, it's coordinated. It's run like a business with league commissioners and a CHL president who has responsibilities to drive the business. And it's measured in dollars and NHL draft picks. Who's the national and international face of D1 hockey? I can't think of one. D1 has commissioners, and I'm sure they do a great job in their conference, but they're siloed. They're not responsible for all of Division I hockey. One of the things that Jackie Parker said to me in that December 2008 meeting that we had in Ann Arbor, we need a president. We need somebody over Division I hockey. And I'll give you a reason why. One of the coaches that I talked to last week said to me, we needed a compliance ruling and we had to call Indianapolis. And we called at 9 o'clock in the morning and we didn't get the answer that we wanted. So we called at 1 o'clock in the afternoon and we didn't get the answer we wanted, but we got a different answer. And we called at 4 o'clock in the afternoon and we got a third different answer. That's inexcusable.
Yep.
A business does not run that way. They need a CEO that listens to the conference commissioners and the coaches. And from those conversations, they need to form strategy that can be executed. The CEO is an idea man and runs the day-to-day operations with the other commissioners, coming up with new ideas and strategies that coaches have an input in, that they're listened to. And they need to be held accountable for dollars, because it's a big business, NHL players, expansion that we talked about, and I'm going to talk about a little bit more here. College hockey needs a CEO. And now's the time to get it, because we've taken 51 of the cards and thrown them away. Read an article on Sunday, guys, on ESPN. And I said after I read the article, this is different. And this is what college hockey has to do. They have to think different. The article was about Andrew Luck, Stanford quarterback, Indianapolis Colts quarterback until he was injured. Maybe a Hall of Famer, not sure. Don't know enough about football. But he's going back to Stanford, not as a coach. He's going back as a general manager.
Yep.
When did you ever hear about general managers in college sports? That is a pro approach to college sports. And why are they doing it at Stanford? Well, when he was at Stanford, they were really good. And Dan, you know more about football than I do, and you follow it more than I do. But I think their record this year was like 2-9, something like that.
It was bad for the loss to San Jose State, Bob.
Right. It's a business. They need somebody to come in there and run the business. College hockey needs to think that way. They need a CEO and they need a staff. And for the record, College Hockey Inc. is going to be, in my plan, would be just like Central Scouting would be with the National Hockey League. It's one of the departments reporting to the lead person. One last point on leadership. I think in one of the past pods, we talked about a gentleman by the name of Roy Kramer. Never knew Roy Kramer. Saw a documentary on him. In 1990, he became the commissioner of SEC football. To all my friends out there in the other conferences, I'm sorry, but SEC is the big dog. And he did something very controversial when he came in. The SEC was 10 teams at the time, and he added 2 teams. Dan, you probably know who the 2 teams are. It doesn't matter. He did it for a reason. And the reason he did it was because there was an NCAA rule that said if you had 12 teams, you could form 2 divisions. And with those 2 divisions, you could now have a conference championship game. Yep. And he took that conference championship game and he monetized it. And it gave the SEC an even higher profile than what it had. Think he was done there? Absolutely not. He was the guy who took us away from voting for a national football championship. He formed the Bowl Alliance. Yep. Okay, so we didn't have a vote. And we had a playoff. First, it was with 2 teams. Then it turned into 4 teams. I think he was gone by then. And now it's 12 teams. Hello, revenue. Now, I know that's football and this is hockey. But don't pigeonhole hockey into something that can't drive revenue. And when you have a CEO that is responsible for all of this, you come up with just wonderful ideas that maybe it just gets you the best NHL hockey players. Maybe it gets you more expansion. I mean, it takes you to places that you would never think you would get to because he's thinking about doing something other than running his team or running his conference. They need somebody who has worked in all these leagues. Somebody who's worked with the CHL, somebody who's worked in Division I, somebody who knows agents inside and out, somebody who's been in the USHL or the BCHL, somebody who has worked with the National Hockey League. They need somebody like that. And there's people out there who can fill this role. But now more than ever, and Jackie Parker seems like a long time ago in 2008, they need this person.
Yeah, and I think when you look at it, when you have a conference commissioner, especially in today's world, the NCAA is run by its biggest moneymaker, as any other business is, and that's football. And what has football shown you about conference commissioners and about conferences in realignment? It's that it's a wild west out there because commissioners are competing for revenue. They're competing for dollars. And the more teams, the more blue bloods, as Bob calls them, are within your framework, the more money you make, the more television revenue you make, the more advertising revenue you make, and the more games you win, putting you on that big stage at the end of the year. So college hockey is not protected from that. The same thing's happening with these commissioners. And without a figurehead who is outside of the need for competition, it's a tough world to win in.
Dan, this is the only sport, to my knowledge, in Division I hockey, or excuse me, in NCAA competition that has a competition for the best players. This group, more than any group, needs the leadership. Let's go on to NHL PA agents. Every Division I coach that I talked to said that the agents are going to steer the ship here. They're in control. I could tell you, I know a lot of agents, and I've talked to a lot of agents over my 30 plus years in this game. Agents care about two things: return on investment and money. Period. End of story. And historically, when you start recruiting kids at 14 and 15 years of age, I don't want to say all the agents are like this, and you can't buck what a player wants to do or a family wants to do. But I can tell you, you ask agents, they want their kids, for the most part, playing in the CHL. Why do they want them playing in the CHL? Because that's the fastest path to signing an NHL contract and getting your money back. The NCAA, forget about Celebrini, forget about Power, forget about Fantilli. They're one-offs. They're unicorns. Most of college hockey players are a longer path. And if you have to carry that kid for another year or 2 years, that's more money out of your pocket, and there's no guarantee that any money is coming back to you. You want that kid to sign that contract, and you want that kid to get his signing bonus so you can start getting yours. College hockey, using all of its tools pointed at the 14 to 17-year-old players, their families. They must change this mindset that college is the way that you want to go, so that they're telling their agents or their advisors that that's the path that I want to take, and I want to get there as a true freshman. Now, Division I schools are going to tell you they've got relationship with agents, and they think agents will help them. We went over the Kevin Hartzell, Peter DeBoer example in our last podcast. Do Division I people have relationships with agents? Sure they do. It's nothing compared to the CHL. And all you have to do is take a look at one number. Well, two numbers. 47% of the players in the National Hockey League come from the CHL. 29% come from the NCAA. It just makes sense that more agents are going to be in the CHL. And I can tell you, all the agents are going to be in the CHL because that's where all the players are going to be playing. Now, there's an opportunity here. If all Division I recruiting is done at a younger age, true freshman or true freshman plus a year, will agents help? And I think they will. Now, this is a dangerous path, and I've discussed this with some agents. Typically on an NHL contract, an agent's getting 3 to 5%. On any endorsements, they're getting 15 to 25 points because it's much more work. Will agents consider nil money an endorsement? Because if they will, if that's considered an endorsement, they will look very favorably on Division I hockey at 18 years of age. The other advantage that college hockey has to sell, and I'm not talking individually, you're going to hear me talk about unified. Do agents want their 18 and 19-year-old players playing against 16 and 17-year-olds? Or do they want them playing against 18 to 22-year-old players that they would be playing against in this model? And by the way, it'll be way more talented 18 to 22-year-olds than you currently have if Division I, in a unified way, takes all the 18 and 19-year-olds from the CHL and they just go to Division I. Let's call it your mini AHL. So they've got some advantages and they have some opportunities right now with agents. But they need the infrastructure to message that to them. They can't do it one at a time. They can't have the boat with every Division I school in it with an oar with no coxswain. They all have to be rowing in the same direction. Let me keep going. I'm on fire right now because I want to get right to name, image, and likeness and Alston money. This pod can't do justice to that tonight. That's a separate pod unto itself.
Yeah.
Okay? Like it's I talked to an NHL coach today who used to be a blue blood coach, and it's a different world. It's a different world. But every Division I school right now, their number one focus needs to be able to form collectives to raise NIL money. And I don't even know if collectives are the right term, guys, but I'm going to call it something different. They need to find their Pagula.
Yep.
That's what they need. They need somebody who's going to dump a lot of money into their program to build them the facilities that are going to give them the advantages they need. And with the Pagula guys comes all of the other investors, because none of the alumni want to miss out when the Pagula gets involved. No money, you're not going to eat. One or two things happens. You're not going to be competitive at Division I, or you're going to be AIC. It's that simple. That should be, and it has to be. It has to be on every administrators, sports, athletic directors' plate right now. How am I going to raise more money for my hockey program or all of my programs? And if they're not specifically talking to the hockey people need to be knocking on the AD's door and saying, we need to do something here if we're going to get serious about Division I hockey. Finally, College Hockey Inc. needs to define what nil money is. Inform, educate players, parents, agents, all about nil. Shine a light on it. Man, these coaches were scared, a lot of them, to talk to me about it. Maybe it's because they don't have any. They were very quick to throw some other schools who do have it under the bus, I can tell you that. But it is a major advantage for college hockey, if they want the 17 and 18-year-olds, for 64 teams to have nil money, not 20. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think everything you've said so far has been about needing to act as a group, right? I think that's very obvious. You're not going to attract NHL agents individually, right? You have to tell them that there is a whole basket of things. All the teams come as one grouping. You talk about, needing to have all of these groups of donors. Yes, you need your Pagula, but you need also the people that support it. They're not going to get the arena named after them, but maybe an atrium, right? Maybe a water feature out front of the rink. But it's everything you're saying is groups. And I just want to shine an extra spotlight on that, because it talks about what we've been kind of saying, which is cooperation before competition. You need to be acting as a group, looking for ways to leverage your size and have it become your strength. And I think that's something that not just college teams and D1 can learn from. I think that's something the hockey community at large can learn from at all levels of the junior game. It's cooperation and then competition. And I feel like that's what you've been driving at kind of with all of these different points, Bob.
Yeah, and just to add in real quick before we kick it back to the professor, from inside sources that I know, I have it on very good faith that there are two, you would call them football powerhouse organizations, that have money earmarked from their Pagulas for on or off campus builds if others that they compete with go to Division I college hockey. But without that, they will not spend that money because of travel issues, because of finding competition, and because of not wanting to be the one through the wall to get bloodied. So the key is, Bob, you talk about groups. Birds got to flock together.
Yeah, pull the rope together, guys. This is a battle for Division One hockey, and they've got to be working together. But Dan, you're the master of transition because you talk about expansion, and that's the next topic: expansion and monetization. The CEO of college hockey needs to find the next Pagula at Florida, at Miami, at USC, at UCLA, at Georgia, at Washington, at Oregon. You want me to keep going? It can't organically happen the way it has before. Somebody's got to drive this revenue.
Yep.
And that position just is not there. D1 needs to run like a business. It needs to hunt for new markets. It needs to monetize those markets. And so I asked Division One hockey, who is the next Roy Kramer? Let's keep going, guys. We're on fire. Number 12. This CEO needs to sell the National Hockey League and Gary Bettman that Gary Bettman wants NHL players coming from Division One NCAA hockey. Bettman's not getting any more money from Canada. There's no more expansion teams going into Canada. They can't get any more TV dollars from Canada. That's done. Where's the room for growth and massive growth? America. What's more sellable for Gary Bettman to American fans? Is it a Buckeye, a Wolverine, a Gopher, a Gator, a Trojan, a Bruin, a Bulldog? Or is it a Ranger, a Knight, a Rampart, or a Hitman? We touched on this in one of the earlier pods. The one thing college hockey has is alumni, and alumni spend money. Gary Bettman needs the NCAA. He has to want to see that the NCAA wants to thrive with the biggest schools on the biggest stages having Division One hockey. That's going to help him monetize at his level.
So there needs to be a favorable CBA, it seems like what you're getting at. And it's not even so much about the specifics right now of what that CBA is, but it needs to be favorable and crafted intentionally to promote NCAA D1 hockey. Somewhere after you complete the steps that you've already laid out, somewhere after the groundwork has been laid, Bettman and the NHL need to come through and support NCAA D1 hockey in the CBA. Otherwise, not that the rest of the stuff doesn't matter, but that's a pretty big swing that you're not getting out of your corner.
What the NHL also has is outdoor hockey, right? They have the Winter Classic every year. They have their Stadium Series. When they go to Canada, they have their Heritage Classic. They have these events that are built to grow the audience of the game, right? How about instead of playing an alumni game, we all love hockey. We all love the alumni. We can announce them before a game. We don't have to put them on the ice and play. And I've been to a bunch of those alumni games. They're fun when they announce the players. It's tough to watch an old Brett Hull skate around the ice. Love the guy, but he's just not the same guy he was when you were playing the NHL. Why not have University of Michigan playing Ohio State at all of these venues, right? Why not grow that? And then you look at it, Bob, as you grow the game and you try to get into these other markets. You talk about expansion. My gosh, you have trouble growing a team in Atlanta. You've tried it. You can't do it. What do you got to do? You got to educate the base. What do they know? They know UGA. They know Bulldogs, right? Look at what they do at the club hockey level in Georgia. Now imagine playing in that Atlanta Dome, a Winter Classic in front of a Georgia fan base that just watched their Bulldogs finish a game as the prequel to a hockey game at the NHL level. There are so many possibilities that grow for Gary Bettman in the U.S. to not just continue to earn revenue from what he has, but to educate the markets they have failed in. There's so many opportunities.
I knew you guys were here for something. Hey, one last point before we get off this. The CHL, they're having meetings with the NHL. Hello? We've got to get on it. Last thing for tonight, guys. We put out a little tease here about the Canadian World Junior team. A lot of people have made comments to me about it. I believe if D1 hockey follows the path that we've laid out over the last this pod and the last pod, all the players on the American and the Canadian World Junior teams will come from Division I hockey. Why? Well, the World Junior tournament's an 18, 19-year-old tournament. Yes, the odd 17-year-old plays in it, but it's an 18, 19-year-old tournament. Where have we been saying all along, if Division I hockey is unified going after the 17 and 18-year-olds who are going to be turning 18 and 19-year-old after they've already been drafted, they'd be in Division I hockey. And that means the Canadian World Junior Hockey team, you might see a lot of Wolverines, Spartans. Pick your school, right, guys? I'm picking the Blue Bloods right now because they're the ones that are typically getting the younger players. But the more important part of this is getting back to what we first talked about, the narrative. Lucas, you're a genius. It's all about the narrative. Can you imagine if the Canadian World Junior team was made up of Division I NCAA players who were all first rounders? Never mind the American team. I mean, you can't buy advertising like that to sell your product. They can do it. They just need a unified plan. Make sense, guys?
Makes a ton of sense, Bob. Makes all the sense in the world. And the biggest thing is who's going to step up, right? When you start a group project, how many times does everyone sit around the room and wait for who's going to do all the work? I know I let Lucas do all the work in class, Bob. As long as I could, I cheated off that guy. Okay, we need a guy to step up and say, enough's enough. We're going to go to war. Who's going to put the stripes on? Who's going to be the general? Who's going to put on that helmet and lead the NCAA Division I ranks to be the best it can be right now? Thank you to our incredible professor, Bob Turow, taking us through it. He doesn't want to be called professor, but if he's going to educate us in the way he is, it's better than calling him Mr. Academic. We're going to stay away from that nickname. Future podcasts coming up, folks. This is what you have to look forward to. Bob talked about it earlier. NIL. There is so much more to cover. It is an entire episode amongst itself. We will talk NIL money. We will take a deep dive in the NCAA portal, the decisions to be made. It's not just for Deion Sanders bringing his Louis Vuitton bags to Colorado Buffalo Nation. It's for hockey as well. We'll talk about that. Next up, what's the future of the USHL? How about the US NTDP team? The BCHL and the NOL have been taking hits. The NOL talking about potential expansion. The BCHL losing players here and there. What will happen with these other leagues around junior hockey? We will talk about that, and roster sizes and scholarship numbers at D1 schools. What about it? You'll have to watch and find out. We will talk about all of this and more. It's Hockey 101. We are taking this time to educate you so you can make the right decisions. And for us NCAA Division I fans, we can have the best product with not just the most successful teams, but the best NHL prospects playing in what our opinion is the best place for hockey, baby, NCAA Division I. Lucas, tell them how they can watch Hockey 101 and continue to follow along.
At the official home of the Dan K Show on YouTube. Coincidentally, official Dan K Show on YouTube is the place to find the show. You can also find us at _the Dan K Show on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and of course X, the artist formerly known as Twitter. You can leave comments on YouTube, comments on those social media pages, DM us if you want. If you got our emails, fire one off. If you got our phone numbers, don't call, send a text. Those are all the ways that you can get in contact with us if you want to talk Hockey 101.
Thanks, guys. What a great pod.
We're not leaving until we talk about Hill Full of Beans, Bob. I promised the people Hill Full of Beans content.
Better than a mountain full of potatoes.
Hill full of beans. We're not talking hill full of beans. We're out of here. See you guys.